All right, I'll just speak a little bit louder. So thank you, Michael, for that introduction. Thank you for hosting me today and for hosting the day on brain capital, which is and obviously a topic close to my heart and to our hearts. And thanks, Ab, also for organizing this. I've written lots of papers about brain capital, which is fine, but let's talk today about doing stuff. And so today I want to share with you this passion area of mine of brain capital and why it's important, etc. But really invite you all, as the team here, as the coalition of the willing, to help us think about how to advance this. How do we advance startups, investing, ESG reform, SDG reform, things like this? How do we advance data projects, education projects? So please, I'll share with you what I'm doing, but please view this as a sort of iterative conversation. So I obviously want to talk about a new brain mission in America, which is very timely given the BRAIN initiative of the White House has had 10 years of funding and is now sort of looking at what is next. So the US government is looking at what is next for the field of brain in the United States. My audacious goal, given I'm at Wharton, is to say that we want to build a new brain tech industry that's valued at over $1 trillion in the next couple decades, right? So I talk in terms of money, but this means that let's not just generate business value, let's generate technologies that are also, of course, equitable, that are getting to people, in the Rio Grande Valley as well as in Manhattan. And let's generate technologies that are useful and evidence-based and not snake oil. So I'm giving you the money construct here, but let's make it actually have impact and teeth. Brain capital, at its essence, is an economic construct. We propose that we need a new economic asset called brain capital that we value in the United States as important as GDP and as important as road and bridge infrastructure. So that's the level that we're thinking of brain capital at. Brain capital, so really it's a pyramid, right? At the top of the pyramid is the economic asset, and then down in the pyramid there are a bunch of projects in mental health, neurology, education, etc. All these projects feed up into the economic construct, but the economic construct then also feeds down and will drive harmony and alignment, and I think you'll see that in my slides. Brain health is this idea of brain health across the lifespan, the health of your brain. It incorporates how well you think and feel and function. It incorporates mental health disorders and also neurological disorders. But brain health is more of a optimistic construct, right? Brain health is not just about the deficits of how depressed are you, how impaired are you, but it's also about the strengths of your brain as well, your resilience, etc. And brain skills is what's unique about brain capital as well. Brain skills gives this a labor and a workforce dimension. So it's important to CEOs and sort of senior policymakers about the skills of the community. So the question is, what brain skills are critical now and in the future? And of course, AI literacy, creativity, adaptability, resilience are all critical brain skills. So really what we do in the last 4 years with brain capital is we unpack this and we think about, what does this mean in policy? What does this mean in investing? How would you measure this? That's really the odyssey that we're on. And we're totally in the stage of pioneering something, which is very exciting, and so glad to share it with you. So my argument is that brain capital is under siege, in America in particular, but of course all around the world. Think about yourself, chronic stress, and stress is getting more and more likely to occur as we have more shocks, climate shocks, political shocks, information shocks, pandemic shocks, COVID-19, social isolation. You see all these things in the news every day, right? Ultra-processed foods, we also are finding out, are toxic to the brain. Chemicals, preservatives, fast sugars, salt, things like this. Disinformation is very toxic, particularly in this country. I'm an Australian, and living in America and seeing the level of mis and disinformation in this country is quite shocking to me. We have some of it in Australia, but it's really turn up the volume in America, as you do with everything, for good and for bad. And I can't get away without giving America a couple digs as an Australian. So what all this brain capital under siege thing, right? It all comes into economics as well. And here's data from the Institute of Health Metrics and Evaluation showing people living with brain health diseases. You can see here on the right, basically mental and neurological disorders, right? And you can see the cost here and it's going up. It's at 1.32 trillion per year already, and it's just continuing to rise. So what does this mean? This means, well, first of all, to say that migraine, depressive disorders, and anxiety disorders are the top most costly. I myself actually live with migraine with visual aura, so that speaks to me, and is part of why I'm interested in the area of the brain. But so what this means, right, if we link together the brain under siege and the economics, what does this mean economically, which I can tell to the Wharton crowd, because you guys know this very well. It means education disruptions throughout the lifespan, right, particularly in middle school and senior school, but younger as well. It means low labor productivity. We know that there's a productivity issue in the country, and we need to think about how to fix it. There's no real playbook for how to fix the productivity challenges that we have. Suboptimal workforce development skills. Instead of maybe going into a master's degree, someone won't have the energy and inspiration. They won't do that master's degree that they could have done before. They'll or instead of going to technical college, they won't go to technical college, or instead of going to do any education, they just won't have the energy to do that. So there's this sort of sub-optimization issue that we're all responsible for helping to try to fix that. So on and so forth. Cyber vulnerability. If you are not sort of ready and agile, you're prone to being, cyber exploitation, spear phishing, and all these types of attacks. Misinformation susceptibility is a big issue, of course, that we know about, that we can talk about further. And all this leads to social discord, economic challenges, and also then, of course, if you have economic challenges, or if you have a sort of divided country, you have national security challenges as well that foreign actors can exploit. So that's why I think that this is existential stuff. Really, what drives me and gets me excited, and why we need a big coalition, is because I think this is really, really important. I think we nearly lost American government in insurrectionist activities, for example. So, I just share that with you, that's where this is coming from for me personally. And all of this kind of brain and mind stuff that I've described to you, I'm giving, there's a lot here, right? I know that I'm sharing a lot with you, and so we can unpack it over the course of the day. It's not dealt with in a coordinated way within government, right? We have different departments and executive, secretaries that are dealing with this stuff. There's no coordinated brain and mind management system within inside of the federal government of the United States, or arguably within inside state governments as well. So part of what this is how do we get better governance of brain and mind issues? Sort of brain science inspired policy is a lot of what we're talking about here. So we need a next generation brain and mind strategy in this country, is what I will argue to you. And so what any kind of nerd does is they look for models about what do we do about this. And so I came across this area of industrial innovation policy, because I'm driven by systemic impact. So industrial innovation policy is what I think we need to do here about the brain and mind, to give this a private sector flair. Industrial innovation policy, the best recent example that was successful is Operation Warp Speed, that gave us the COVID vaccines during COVID, right? And was super important in getting us to where we are today. So think Operation Warp Speed, but apply it to the brain. That's really what I'm doing. And so I've sought out the experts in industrial innovation policy. We've written this paper and a number of other papers. A number of the co-authors are in the audience today, so thank you to them, including Michael and Zab. We have 7 steps to this industrial innovation strategy, and I'm going to go through them one by one now. It goes, of course, from defining what is brain capital technology, linking it to built infrastructure, thinking about finance, and thinking about supportive policy. So really trying to take this big idea. This is a dream, right? A dream to have a new brain tech industry valued over $1 trillion. Then, so how do we take that dream and break it up into chunks? How do we sort of, as someone said last night, we have an elephant here. How do we bite off pieces of the elephant and try to make it realistic? That's what this is about. So brain capital technologies, really brain improvement technologies across the lifespan, from technologies to help with autism, dyslexia in the early years, help with brain development in the early years, help with youth mental health, help with bipolar schizophrenia, help with workforce productivity improvements. Things like that. So again, I know this is a business school. I'm only supposed to present 3 constructs in a slide, right? So it's more than 3, but I'm also, this is meant to be a little bit mind expanding for everyone, and we can unpack it throughout the course of the day. So forgive me. what this really is, brain capital technology, think of it as analogous to space tech. Space tech is a constellation of technologies, right, that's from rocket engines to satellites. And someone decided to put a ring around and say this is space tech. So why can't we today put a ring around brain capital technology and say that this is a thing too? And that way we can rally governments and private investors behind this construct and try to, because at the moment we have like mental health tech, neurology tech, ed tech, all in sort of operating in different universes. We need to bring them together because we can share executive talent, we can share investment capital, best practices, procurement practices, all these types of things, product development between these areas, because fundamentally they're all neuroscience inspired. Kuth is an example of a child and youth mental health technology. You're going to hear from Kuth throughout the day. Those are Kuth speakers here. It's a British company, essentially digital front door for kids and their mental health care. And relevant there on the right is that Pennsylvania is rolling out Kuth across school systems, 30 school districts. So this is just an example to give you a sense of what kind of technology I'm talking about. But think Kuth, but across all aspects of life as well. So then linking to built infrastructure is important, right? Technology, technology doesn't solve everything. The technological determinism has probably failed to think that technology will fix everything. We need technologies to be integrated into existing systems like schools, like universities, like health systems. We need to think about the role of technology. How does a healthcare worker work, with a technology, but also with the human touch? The hybrid touch is very critical. So this is important in the context of building a large new industry, basically. And here's a nice example from HKS, an architecture firm, and then a group, a Center for Brain Health at UT Dallas, brain health in the workplace. So basically they did a study and looked at what is the best way to optimize brain health in the workplace. I thought this was really interesting. There's a report published online about it, but it's all about taking a mixture of rest breaks, social teamwork, time during the day, isolated time where you can do deep focus on your work, and then more rest and exercise and healthy food and this type of stuff. But it's nice to see that someone's done a study to look at what is the most brain healthy workplace that could happen. Okay, next into the stuff that hopefully will interest a lot of you in the audience coming from Wharton. What are novel financial approaches to this? And I think in the next session we're going to be talking a lot about novel financial instruments. We know of venture capital, of course. We know of government grants. But what about new ideas like venture philanthropy, public-private partnerships, ESG accounting frameworks that need to be reformed given the criticisms of ESG these days? Let's think about how can we develop new financial instrumentation, because ultimately policy is good, right, to try to advance the brain capital of this country, but we really need the dynamism of the private sector. And I hope that, given we're at Wharton, that you guys will agree with me. This is an example of a French-American fund that operates between Paris and Silicon Valley. That is the first fund that focuses on brain capital technology. It does seed stage investments. So investing in skills development, neurology, nutrition, and psychiatry. That's how they have constructed brain capital investing. So I'm a pro bono advisor to this group. It's great to see that they're taking brain capital on board. It's a relatively small size VC fund, getting up to 75 million euros, but it's a good start, right? So this brain capital stuff is clearly taking hold, which is wonderful. Also like to point out that the Danish government, of course, very progressive, has developed a public-private partnership approach with the Danish government. With Novo Nordisk, they've developed a public-private partnership to fuel healthy weight startups in Denmark. And then with Lundbeck, they've developed a public-private partnership to fuel mental health startups in Denmark as well. And so this is a really great example. Basically, the Danish government got together, the Prime Minister, the Minister for Business and Innovation, the Minister for Health, Social Services, Foreign Affairs, all came together to cook up how could they build up an industrial innovation strategy in the country of Denmark. So I think we can learn lessons from the Danes on this. And they also map this to the Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations, as we were talking about last night. So this is a good model for us. But a piece of work that needs to be done is how do we assess public-private partnerships and work out what are the best ways to develop them. That's a good analytic project. Someone needs to do a PhD on it, perhaps, through the Wharton Neuroscience Initiative. the workforce is critical too, right? You don't just say that we want to have a new industry. We need the workforce to actually, build the products and services, manufacture them, design, et cetera, do the legal work. So we need to develop and rally our workforce in America to do this. We need workers to be brain healthy. We need them to be critical thinkers, creative, AI literate. Every worker now that's going to be building a brain capital technology solution needs to co-pilot with AI. They need to be entrepreneurial because this stuff is all new and creative. So we need to think about long-term education, workplace optimization, and building creative infrastructure. So I think that, for example, some of the executive education that Zab and Michael lead is teaching about neuroscience in business is a good example of educational tools like this that we need if we're going to do this big new industry. And of course, the White House is driving forward the bioeconomy construct in the United States, an economy that they want to see based on biotech and bioengineering and biomanufacturing and biopharmaceuticals. So the White House is already aligned to this, and I would say that we're talking about a neurobioeconomy in a sense. So it's a little bit different, but very much aligned with what the White House is thinking and doing. Defining mission. So people say that government these days is not very good at getting things done. So one idea is if you give the government a mission and say, go after this particular thing to cut expenditure by 25% in this area, you can get the government to focus on one thing and really nail it. So it's called mission economics, pioneered by Marianne Mazzucato out of UCL. I propose that we need to think about missions in the context of brain capital, in the context of education, mental health, brain health, etc. Can we say as a country, or can a state, Pennsylvania or California, say we're going to cut dementia by 10% in the next 10 years, and we all rally behind that. The government gets, sets the agenda, and then the private sector comes in, and then the government and the private sector sort of one-up each other and synergize, and we can get things done that way. So just another idea about how we could potentially move this new industry forward. This is a public policy think tank, the Meadows Mental Health Policy Institute, that's doing this in depression. They have this mission in depression funded by a philanthropist, Lyda Hill, and you can see that their goal is to increase the rate of recovery from depression in Texas from less than 10% to more than 50%. So this is an example of a mission that's being done today. So in your area, what mission would you imagine for your area of focus? What could you do or envisage and suggest to us that we could try to think about how to get behind that? Coordination within government is critical. I showed the jigsaw pieces before, they're all discoordinated. So then what is the idea for integrating this? Well, I would love to see a White House council, like the Council of Economic Advisors. What about a council on brain capital innovation? Could we imagine a council, with Michael sitting on it, the Secretary of Health, the Secretary of State, Zab sitting on it as well, maybe Mitch Elkind up there, public and private people that are broad-minded, that can really bring this together across government and think about solutions. Because I just don't think this is happening right now, and I think that that's why our brain capital is under siege. And if we don't do something different, we're just going to continue to repeat the same things that we're doing. So anyway, this is interesting. We've written about this and are always trying to talk to Congress people and senators and such to unpack this further. And then, as I said before, technology doesn't solve everything, right? You don't just expect that you can give someone an app and it's going to fix all their issues. We need to nest our big new industry inside supportive policies. So we need to think about what are we doing about climate sustainability and general sustainability and inequality. And we've written pieces about all of this stuff. What are we doing about food and nutrition? We argue that the industrialized food system, which has been helpful to generate long life food to get to all corners of the planet, all corners of our country, is being good. But now industrialized food is ultra-processed food mostly, and it's creating depression and anxiety. A lot of data is coming to show that. So we need to also think about food systems, so on and so forth, right? How do we, this is for any of the policy wonks in the room, this is post-industrial policy innovation. That's beyond just products and basically technological products. We had a wonderful session at the United Nations General Assembly about a month ago. I had a new baby since we did this at the UN. We have a 3-week-old girl, so I can't remember exactly when this was. It feels like about a month ago. But Zab was there, And so here you can see we had a great presentation by the governor of Washington State, Jay Inslee. We basically did a whole day on brain capital building, more from a policy perspective and a UN global perspective, with politicians from Argentina and people from all around the world. So that was wonderful. I have a report to share if anyone wants to read about that. We looked at not just industrial innovation, but architecture and economic security issues and things like this. So I guess I just show this because we're making progress, right? I'm not just making this up on the spot, where we have some track record that we're building towards. One of the things that came out of the UN event is people said, hey, the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals that are all listed here, the 17 of them, they're actually not doing so well. If anyone tracks them, we're kind of jammed up a little bit. They're a bit seized. So people suggested we need to put brain capital on the SDG agenda and the post-SDG agenda. The SDGs will be sunset in 2030. So a big piece of work we're doing now is to link brain capital to all of these SDGs. There's really a bi-directional feedback loop. I won't get into it now in the interest of time. But you can see easy ones, right? Like what I've talked about today is relevant to good health and well-being if we have these technologies, mental health and neurological disorders. It's relevant to decent work and economic growth, relevant to industrial innovation and infrastructure, reducing inequalities, relevant to the built environment here, number 11, so on and so forth. So we're in the process of building this up. We're going to be presenting our model for brain capital in the SDGs at the UN Climate Change Conference in Dubai in early December at COP28. And here's the punchline with the SDGs, is that, and Dan is an asset manager, he'll talk a bit more about this. It turns out that pension funds and sovereign wealth funds, where trillions and trillions of dollars in the global economy sits, pension funds and sovereign wealth funds, turns out that they take some direction from the SDGs and, of course, ESG. And so in the post-SDG and the post-ESG agenda, if we position brain capital or the brain and mind effectively, can we unlock $1 trillion or a couple $1 trillion towards these issues that we've talked about today, and we're going to talk about more and more. This is the kind of benefit of policy, financial policy, economic policy, that we can reform SDG a little bit, reform ESG a little bit. This is very technical work, so we need help. And actually, as we were walking up this morning into the 8th floor, there's a talk on ESG innovation. So I think, again, Wharton is the perfect place to help us to think about this, because we have these ideas, but now we need to work with specialists in the analytics part of this to make this a reality. But this, I think, is a big idea that we could all work on together. So again, this is the mission. We want to build this big new brain tech industry. We don't just want to do it for the numbers and the revenue and the profit. We want to do it for impact, to provide equity to people in all corners of the country, in all corners of the planet. And we want to do it to improve the outcomes that we have. Many existing solutions, say in mental health, neurology, don't work very well. The remission rates are pretty poor. So we also want to make this better outcomes as well. So this is my big idea, and I hope that I've given you some inspiration, but then also tried to break it down into chunks. And I look forward to getting everyone's feedback during the day, and very open to constructive criticism. So thank you so much.